ready? Can you guys hear me? Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is David Wilford. I'm the Chief Legal and Compliance Officer for Global Primex. We was going to get up today and talk a few minutes about what we're going to be hearing through this morning's sessions, and it's everybody's favorite topic in payments, which is fraud, risk, security, and compliance. And when I was thinking about this, I was talking to a couple of panelists who are going to be up here today and was thinking sort of high level conceptually about why we talk about this stuff and what it means to the business. I wanted to more or less pose a couple of just questions for us to all think about broadly when we're talking about these topics, because the people that are on the panels today have a lot of good ideas, product solutions, and details that they're going to talk about to address some of these issues. We're all here today. This whole conference is dealing with digital commerce. You know, we all know that the move from analog business to digital presents its own unique challenges, most of which are technological in nature, and I think that is what I'm excited to hear a lot about today. Some of these problems are the same, you know, fraud, people stealing money, but that's, you know, the scale is now different because of the digitization and the broadness of the internet. I do get sometimes get the feeling, and maybe it's just because I'm an attorney and I'm focused on fraud and risk, that companies talk about fraud and risk and compliance a lot, but it, you know, I've been an in-house counsel and been in payments for about 15 years, and a lot of time those concepts and those operational issues get stuck behind focus on sales, marketing, business development. But this thing that we're talking about today, dealing with fraud, allocating risk, securing your payments, that is really the foundation of our electronic payments ecosystem. You know, it's not a sexy topic, but it's the thing that makes the whole system function. So, again, fraud, risk, security, and compliance. Fraud, you know, for thousands, people have been trying to steal money since money was first invented. How do we identify all these access points along this whole customer journey where fraud can happen? How do we choke it off at each of those points? How do we have a technical solution that'll find that behavior that starts to manifest itself that people can identify and solve for? Our first keynote, Casey Zenner, is going to have some interesting ideas about how AI can help with that and what kind of solutions are possible to prevent fraud from happening in the first place. The easiest thing to do is to stop it from happening. So risk, how do we identify it, allocate it, account for it, for any particular business model that all of us here in the room or each of our individual companies have individual risks that we do. How do we associate risks with a particular demographic, with a particular geography, with a particular, or even with a particular access method that people use to get into the payment system and get a hold of their own money? Security. How do we protect this information? How do we lock it up, encrypt it? How do we keep it from leaking out? We'll hear from Mansoor at Validity today about the promises and challenges of quantum computing, which is something that I wasn't even on my radar until I spoke to him about it. We'll hear from Rustin Miles about the wide-ranging damage that data breaches can do and what that costs us as an individual, as a company, as a society, people's trust in this system that we have. We'll hear some interesting discussions about how we, as consumers, even access our own data. You know, the move to finally, thank God, get rid of passwords and do something else, use biometrics. You know, these are all practical issues. I mean, these are issues that when we're running businesses we face every single day. How do we move our money safely? How do we access it? You know, instead of doing what we've done for thousands of years, which is reach into a bag and grab a handful of coins, now we just take our phone and hold it up to our face. That's how we get our money today. And once all your money is digital, how do you prove that it's your money in the first place? These are all like I said, foundational, very interesting issues that we're going to hear a lot about today. That's it. Thanks for coming. I'm excited to hear what these panelists have to say, and we'll get started. Thanks.
Thanks, David. Appreciate it. So we're going to just get going. Not going to waste any time this morning as we get going on the fraud, risk, security, and compliance track. As you can hear, I'm losing my voice. So, so I'm going to bring up to the stage now our keynote for this morning, and that's going to be Casey Zenner. He's the Vice President of Global Sales at Count, which is an Equifax company. Casey?
Oh, the infamous last day of a conference in the first speaking session. Really appreciate everyone's time and attention today. I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be able to speak to a lot of you about not only fraud and risk and all the areas and elements that we need to be thinking about, but also the critical component of data behind that. Before I do kick into things, I would like to thank Marla and Shiloh for welcoming us, welcoming my team to this event. We really appreciate being a part of your guys' great event and the entire MPC team. So thank you again for the time and attentiveness today. So I had a chance to sit and listen to a lot of the different keynote speakers along the way, and yeah, I'm here to talk about fraud and how fraud follows the money. That is such a critical component to all of commerce today. But what's the real foundation behind fraud and behind payments, and it looks like I should be able to cue my own stuff forward here. I believe that's that. Yes, perfect. So the other key component to identifying fraud is the notion of data and how critical data is. And what I mean by that, and what I figured out after the first couple of years of starting in enterprise sales and getting the leadership account was, yeah, fraud is a big component, but one of the biggest failures that a lot of people have is, are we so focused on fraud that we're going to be declining our good customers? Are we going to be preventing more sales from occurring? That's a big challenge for businesses, whether they had to escalate their digital commerce presence due to the pandemic, or they really just wanted to fine-tune the type of fraud and risk mitigation solution they deployed if they're high-value price tags or different type of bespoke use case. So again, it's something that's really critical for us today is data. And I am going to start with a bit of the Count overview. You gross sales guy pitching his sales stuff, but I do think talking about the Count side of the business and the type of data that we have at our disposal really does lay the foundation for why data is so critical, why identity and fraud is so critical, and why we've done a pretty poor job for the last couple of years of being so reactive to fraud. And I'll get into more details about what I mean from a reactive perspective, but I think it's a great opportunity for any business in here that wants to start identifying customers much earlier, assessing risk, acquiring this data, and then what I can do with that data as a follow-through to our business. So a bit about Count. We launched in 2007 as a standalone business. We've actually been fighting fraud since the late 90s. We were actually created by a merchant for merchants to help stop digital download fraud, right? So we had to be very fast, very effective in real time. We own and control all of our tech stack, which I think is real critical when we talk about speed and being able to be data secure and data compliant. And that's only going to continue to evolve as we continue to become more aware of data privacy and security, right? So the type of data that you as businesses will require of customers will continue to shrink and shrink, but at the same time, you got to rely on a partner that has a wealth of data to help you augment that data and use multidimensional data to your benefit. Operate in Boise, Idaho, acquired by Equifax in 2001. That was a fun process. And obviously my slide's a little wonky down there, but we represent around 15 to 20,000 customers worldwide across the globe, 75 different industries. Why that's important? We see a lot of unique different data to solve a litany of different use cases. Now, the digital customer journey, I think, is really important and really critical. What we at the foundation at Count do to provide is end-to-end protection across the entire customer journey. So when you think of account creation, when you think of account login or verification, when you think of login type activities and payments, there are so many different opportunities for a brand to have a better customer experience or to put up different types of blockers or friction where it's necessary. And a prime example of that, my Starbucks app had been compromised once before, right? And what was interesting to me when I went and looked at that is I buy 2 cake pops for my 2 kids and a coffee most Saturday and Sunday mornings when we're out running about. I had an auto reload that would establish on my web properties. But what was interesting to me is, and I live in Boise, Idaho, Apple iPhone. What's weird is being able to look at the fact that somebody with an Android device logging in Houston, Texas, was able to drain my account around the same time every month at a certain point of time. That's frightening, right? And if without the right checks and balances in place, it could be a challenge to be able to validate a lot of that stuff. So the big important piece to that is data and workflow, right? Data and workflow to improve authorization rates, data and workflow to limit your fraud exposure, data and workflow to create a better customer experience for your customers when we're along that entire customer journey and that experience. So when we talk about enabling this personalized friction or frictionless customer experience, it starts with these 4 quadrants, right? The first 2 are really critical to be talking about identity and fraud, and the last 2 is what we can do with that data to help find more customers like your ideal good customer. So we'll get in and talk about that. I hate this slide, very busy, but at the same time, I think it's important to be thinking about trusted environments for your customers, right? At that account creation, at the protection level, the payment type, right? The payment doesn't just happen when I land on that checkout page to fill out my information. It could happen all the way as early as me clicking on an ad to get to your specific web properties. So giving many organizations, brands, merchants, whatever you want to call yourself, the opportunity to acquire first-party data to be able to influence your own business decisions as you lead that customer to green pastures, lead them to water, what have you. And then how I can use that data on the back end to help create personalized marketing experiences, loyalty and advocacy, different types of account-based marketing. It's important for me to be able to find more people like Casey to come in and shop with us religiously. I'll be the first to say I got a real Lululemon problem. They likely want to find more people like me to come in, whether it's through websites, whether it's in-store. So how I can leverage that data to be more effective with our customer acquisition. So identity. Identity is the approach that we need to go as as a business, right? As businesses selling to consumers online. Like I mentioned before, most of what we do is very reactive. We are not doing our fraud and risk checks until there's something that could be lost for us as a business, whether it's selling a good, whether it's HBO Max letting you sign up for your new service. Shout out to anybody who watched the new Game of Thrones spinoff on Sunday. So being able to assess risk and identify people much earlier in their experience, their engagement with you, I think is very critical. Not only from a risk perspective, but also allows you to start tying these data points together, whether it be a device, an email address, a login, a credit card, a shipping address. Being able to start compiling this information is very critical, and having this type of buyer behaviors early in that buying process, I think, is very critical. So when we talk about assess, identity detection, fraud, these are the foundation of what Count will always be focused on for our customers, right? Being able to make sure you're preventing as many chargebacks as humanly possible to allow for a greater number of orders to be accepted during your consumers' engagement with your web properties, helping you dispute chargebacks, but more importantly, start looking at other data signals as well. What is my propensity to pay? Is Casey the type of individual that you want to offer a credit card to? Is Casey the type of individual that you don't want to offer credit limits to? What can data tell us as organizations, as businesses, to start creating a better pathway and a better customer experience, right? So while we want to make sure we're focused on risk, customer experiences also should be looking at with the same lens. And again, the foundation of what I said before, data and workflow really lays the foundation for being able to accomplish this just common good for your web experience. So again, assessing risk, being able to have a 360-degree view of your customers from the first time they land on their site to it's Casey on Lululemon transacting for the 5th time this month, right? We want to make sure that we have really good data to influence that. So this is more of this, instead of being so reactive, being more proactive approach that I mentioned before. How we use the same data that we have from our customers when they create an account, when they log into an account, when they make purchases, how can I engage with them? I'll tell you, nothing is better for me when I land on a particular favorite merchant site than when I have a customized experience based on the type of goods and services that I buy regularly, or different types of promotions that could be important to me. We can use this data, first-party data, is data we've already collected on Casey at various websites, at our websites to be able to understand what his buying behaviors and patterns are so we can engage with him more. That creates better loyalty, better advocacy, reduces friction. I got to tell you, nothing irritates me more than I'm on my favorite merchant's website and they ask me to put in my CVV again. They should have that data. They should have that trust already established with my location, my device that I'm using, time zones that I typically transact in. Allow that data to be able to be the first throughput of us being able to assess the likelihood of risk and that good customer experience. And then loyalty is so key. If there's anybody in here that's kicking the tires, starting with loyalty, I know we had some good conversations about that yesterday. Loyalty is critical, and it's just a way for you to really be able to grow and build your customer base and get a better understanding of what's important to them. And how we grow, right? Targeted offerings and promotions. I use this analogy quite a bit. I may fancy quite a bit of Project Rock gear from Under Armour, right? So when I go into underarmour.com, you want to be able to have targeted offerings for products and services that are more tailored towards me versus, different types of tennis skirts for my wife, right? Want to be able to start looking at different ways we can offer promotions, and data is the foundation to that. You guys will hear me continue to hammer the importance of data in that workflow, and also reduce cart abandonment. If we make it difficult for our customers to transact with us, cart abandonment is going to be a real deal. Like I mentioned before, the CVV or requiring different types of data validation. We want to get away from that, and data can be the foundation to help us in that area. Marketing is always going to put one of the tie it all together slides where we talk about our network, but it is good to talk about, right? And all this is the foundation across Count's award-winning identity and trust global network. We're really coming out since the Equifax acquisition with different types of products and services that we have available, where it's KYC checks, OFAC, different types of ways to engage with different issuing and acquiring banks, if there's any of those folks in the audience today. There's great levels of data that we will have at our disposal to not only help with risk, but also help with better customer identification and identity across your web experiences. And this is just a great example of the customers that are trusted partners of ours today. What I love about this slide is it's not just your traditional retail type engagement. It's when I'm signing up to pay for my fuel, driving up and paying for it at the pump with your phone. I love doing that. That's great. Sure beats getting the card out. And it's buying your health and supplements from GNC. It's getting your cup of coffee at Pete's Coffee. It's getting your Domino's Pizza. There's so many different areas of opportunity that we have to address real world problems for fraud and risk for our customers, and now being able to come back and start talking more about identity and finding more like customers of your best customers, I think is really critical and really important for where we're going as businesses and where we're going as society to start leveraging this data in a more meaningful way. I think I hate this slide worse than the other one, but what we want to make sure we identify here is, of all those 4 different points that we mentioned before, identity, assess, engage, and grow, these are different types of examples of opportunities that we have, whether it be in pre-fill to engage, right? We know this is Casey, let's pre-fill his credit card, let's pre-fill his information. At that point of identity, right, being my ability to pay, is this the right geolocation for Casey? The assess risk, has this account been taken over? Was this account created a year ago, had 0 activities, and now they want to put a credit card in there? At that account change, great opportunity to assess the likelihood of risk. So being more dynamic with your risk strategy, I think, would be really key. So again, tying all this together, a litany of different use cases to help your business be able to identify, assess, engage, and grow with your customer base. 3 minutes, I promised Shiloh that I would have 3 minutes left for any Q&A, and I was about right on the money. So I would love to open this up for any questions. I'm happy to jump in. Yes, ma'am.
For your platform, in terms of identity, do you know Casey across multiple merchants, or how's the data perspective?
Great question. So I'm sure you all heard that. It's not a big auditorium. So if you are a business operating with us and you wanted to look in the platform in terms of what sort of data is available to you, I will give you everything about your customers for your transactions specific to what they bought, average order size, et cetera, et cetera. When you talk about it from the Count network, we will link from that unsupervised machine learning how many times we've seen that persona in a given time, right? Which is elements of what we have analyzed about that device. Number of email addresses, different types of devices all associated with that persona. So that's prime example, we won't tell you, hey, Pete's Coffee, this is all the customers Domino's saw.
Yeah, but like for me, if I have a transaction at Pete's Coffee in the morning, and then, then there's another transaction in Houston, Texas, all of a sudden.
Yeah.
A few minutes after, would you know, and then would you calculate that into the risk decision?
Great question, and absolutely we do. So we rescore every one of our transactions every 30 seconds for up to 2 weeks on that supervised machine learning ensemble. So with the two types of machine learnings that count deploys, our first one, our unsupervised, will look across all of our customer network over the given time that we have, right? How many personas, emails. The supervised is where we rescore and retrain through 250 unique models for that specific use case. If we see a bloat in a persona, like we just saw this account log in here, or transact here in Boise, Idaho, now we're seeing it in Houston. Why is that, right? Now, there's a few data elements that we would look at. Have we seen this card transact with Casey's property before? Is this his son going to school at University of Houston, right? We want to be able to look at that. So really allowing data and history help dictate that. But in the event like an account takeover scenario, obviously that's something that would blow up the persona. That's something that if it was count checking on that for Pete's Coffee, that we would like to identify them. And you can't hold for manual review in those situations. So the real component is leveraging that data to either approve or decline that, and it's going to happen in about 200 milliseconds. Does that help? I can go way deeper if you want to get down in the weeds.
It's okay. I think this is good. Thank you.
Okay, of course. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So, my question is basically goes to the credit card. Say, for example, you are a credit card holder.
Yep.
And Casey, in your example, Casey is a credit card holder. And Casey's son is somewhere else in Houston. He is trying to use the credit card, right?
Yep.
That is not advisable because the credit card belongs to Casey,
Yep.
right?
Belongs to me.
Your systems, like you are identifying that transaction is a valid transaction because Casey authorized to use that credit card to his son, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
In that case, right, this is not advisable, right?
The-
How do you suggest Casey, do you have a model to suggest Casey not to use that?
Yeah, and that's such a great point. And we are looking at like gray areas of those type of use cases. But if I'm the one who opened a credit card for myself, and in that example that I'm giving it to my son, he's going to school in the University of Houston, we do want to look at data before. Have I now used that card in other devices or emails that are linked within my persona before, right? So has my son used my iTunes account to buy tokens at certain video games that he plays online? Have we seen any sort of behavior of this cluster and collaboration before? To the root of your point, if it's a brand new card, there's probably going to be some friction that needs to occur in there because that's the right thing to do. If it's a brand new card in a geographic area that we haven't seen before, there will be friction, there should be friction. But the real key to any sort of a banking institution or even me as a consumer is to help call to validate those things. Anytime I travel internationally, I'm always getting a phone call from my Washington Federal Bank, should you be transacting in London, England? Yes, or I'll just proactively call them ahead of time. So are there gray areas in there that nobody's going to be foolproof in those? And that's fine, you shouldn't be, because as we've learned through this entire process or this entire conference, risk should be something that we take very seriously, and a situation like that looks very risky. So let's allow ourselves to be able to let data dictate a lot of how we should treat that if we've seen clusters together. And to follow up to that, be proactive with your financial institution. Let them know this is my son's card. He's going to be utilizing this in Houston while he's in school. Does that help?
Yeah, it's really help. But what I can say, bank is kind of go and suggest Casey.
Yeah.
Hey, if you really want to let your son use this card, why not you can authorize him and give him
Correct.
access to the card?
Then you should be fine.
Just letting them to use your card,
Yep.
it's your identity, and gonna be fall in other hand.
Yep.
In this case, your son.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And considering this young generation is kind of playing the card, and you are not card holders, it's kind of creating a loophole for a fraud.
Yeah, that wasn't a problem that we had when you and I were coming up, because I mean the digital game, even the credit card game wasn't what it was. And I've had some interesting conversations with people today about having little QR reader watches for their kids. and going through college, I was talking with somebody, I think I saw her in the audience. If my son's in college and still has that on his thing, that linked to my bank account, then I've done something wrong as a dad. Like, get a job, son. So, I'm out of time. I'm going to be, we're the mystery booth over here. Our booth just finally showed up today, about the point to break down. We have a lot of candy that I promise you I don't want to take home with me. So please, if you have any more follow-up questions, I'd love to dig in a little bit further. Y'all come talk to us. Thank you all for your time.